A silent threat in the dark. The darkness of space stretched endlessly, a vast ocean of black dotted with distant stars. The wreckage of destroyed ships floated like silent ghosts, their twisted metal hulls telling the story of a battle long lost. Human and alien vessels alike drifted through the void, lifeless and broken. Through this graveyard of war, a massive shadow moved, silent, powerful, unstoppable. It was the UHS Invincible, the Titan-class supercarrier, the pride of humanity's fleet. Its sheer size dwarfed every wreck in its path. It was more than a ship. It was a fortress, a moving city designed for one purpose: to win wars. Inside the Invincible, the bridge hummed with activity. Admiral Jonathan Kane stood tall at the center, his eyes locked on the holographic display in front of him. He was a man of experience, a veteran of countless battles. His uniform was crisp, his face marked with the scars of past wars. He had seen what the Excelvari Empire could do: entire planets reduced to ash, civilizations erased in mere hours. And now, the enemy was coming again. "Status report," Kane ordered, his deep voice calm but firm. Commander Elena Strauss, his second-in-command, tapped on the glowing console. "We're approaching Kelros 4, sir. The colony has gone dark." Last transmission was a distress signal, then nothing. Kane's jaw tightened. Another lost colony. He had seen too many. The Excelvari did not take prisoners. They only destroyed. "Scanners?" Kane asked. A young officer, Lieutenant Vance, looked up from his station. His face was pale. "No life signs detected on the colony, Admiral. But something is wrong." Kane's sharp eyes locked onto him. "Explain." Vance swallowed. "Our long-range sensors, they're not picking up any enemy ships. If the colony was attacked, we should see wreckage, Excelvari patrols, something. But space is empty." Silence fell over the bridge. Too quiet. Too perfect. Kane's instincts screamed at him. This wasn't a normal attack. It was something else. Strauss leaned in, her voice a whisper. "Sir, what if it's a trap?" Kane nodded slowly. He had learned long ago that war was a game of deception. That Excelvari were ruthless, but they were also cunning. They wanted him to move forward, to take the bait. But he had no choice. If there was even a chance of survivors, he had to act. He turned to his crew. "Prepare the fleet. We move in carefully. Activate stealth protocols. I want all fighter squadrons on standby." The bridge came alive with movement. Orders were given, consoles beeped, the ship shifted course. The Invincible glided forward, its powerful engines humming softly. As the supercarrier neared Kelros 4, the planet came into view. It was a world of blue oceans and green forests, untouched by the flames of war. But there were no signs of life, no lights from the cities, no movement, no radio signals. Then, the first warning came. "Sir," Vance shouted, "we just lost contact with the Sentinel and Vanguard." Kane's head snapped toward him. "What?" "They just disappeared from our radar. No explosion, no energy readings. It's like they were never there." An uneasy feeling crawled down Kane's spine. Warships didn't just vanish. Another officer called out, panic in his voice. "Sir, we're detecting a massive energy distortion ahead. Something is forming in space." Kane turned toward the viewport. In the darkness beyond the planet, something shifted. The stars themselves seemed to ripple. Then, they appeared. One by one, hundreds of Excelvari warships uncloaked, their dark, insect-like hulls reflecting the faint glow of Kelros 4's sun. Their fleet was vast, stretching as far as the eye could see. And they were already in attack formation. Kane's blood turned cold. Red alert. Shields up. Battle stations now. Alarms blared. Crew members rushed to their positions. The Invincible's defenses powered up, its massive energy shields flaring to life. A voice crackled through the speakers, a transmission from the enemy. The screen flickered, revealing a tall, armored figure with glowing violet eyes. The Xelvari overlord, Ziran, stared at Kane with an eerie smile. "Ah, Admiral Kane. I was hoping you would come." His voice was a cold whisper, filled with amusement. "I see you brought your precious supercarrier. Good. That will make this easier." Kane clenched his fists. "You won't take this ship, Ziran." The alien's smile widened. "Oh, Admiral, we already have." Before Kane could respond, the Invincible shook violently. Explosions erupted across its hull. The lights flickered. Warning signals blared. They had jammed the ship's systems. Trapped, surrounded, outnumbered, and the battle had just begun. The Xelvari ambush. The UA's Invincible shook violently as another explosion rocked its outer hull. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge, casting eerie shadows on the tense faces of the crew. Kane grabbed onto the command console, his mind racing. Ziran's words echoed in his head. "We already have." The enemy hadn't just ambushed them. They had planned every second of this encounter. "Status report," Kane barked. Commander Strauss, her fingers moving swiftly across the glowing console, paled. "Shields are down to 73%. We're taking heavy fire from all sides." "Sir, the enemy fleet has us completely surrounded," Lieutenant Vance added, his voice strained. "Their weapons are targeting our propulsion systems. They're trying to keep us stuck here." Kane gritted his teeth. That Xelvari didn't want to destroy the Invincible. They wanted to disable it. Capture it. A chill ran down his spine. "We need to move, now," Kane said, his voice hard. "Helm. Engage evasive maneuvers, full thrusters." The Invincible's engines flared to life, and the massive warship lurched forward, its colossal frame pushing through the enemy's barrage. Smaller ships swarmed around it, firing energy lances that cracked against the carrier's shields. But the Xelvari were fast. Too fast. The enemy fleet moved like a school of predators, cutting off every escape route. The Invincible had size and power, but the Xelvari had speed and numbers. Then, a new threat emerged. "Sir, something's happening," Vance shouted. "Enemy ships are forming a pattern. They're generating some kind of field." Suddenly, space rippled. A massive gravitational force pulled at the Invincible, slowing it down. The artificial gravity field had been activated, a trap designed specifically for ships of its size. Kane's heart pounded. "They got a gravity well. We're being pinned down." Commander Strauss swore, "We won't make it out at this speed. If they immobilize us completely, they'll board us." Kane finished grimly. A new horror dawned on the crew. This wasn't just a battle. It was a takeover. The Titan-class supercarrier fights back. Kane refused to let that happen. "Launch all fighter squadrons," he commanded. Hundreds of human starships blasted out from the Invincible's docking bays. Fighters, bombers, and escort frigates swarmed out like a metal storm, engaging the enemy in chaotic dogfights. Explosions lit up the void as ships clashed. Missiles streaked through space, cutting down Xelvari vessels. Bright energy beams slashed through enemy fighters, sending them spiraling into nothingness. Inside the Invincible, the crew worked furiously. "Sir," Strauss called out, "we have a chance. If we can overload our engines, we might break free from the gravity well." Kane nodded. "Do it. Redirect all auxiliary power to thrusters." A low hum filled the ship as power was diverted. The Invincible's engines glowed brighter, forcing the massive ship forward, breaking through the gravitational drag. But the enemy wasn't finished. The boarding begins. An alert blared across the ship. "Hull breach detected. Enemy boarding parties inbound." Kane's heart sank. That Xelvari had breached the ship. "All security teams, engage the intruders," he ordered. Throughout the Invincible, Xelvari boarding pods slammed into the hull, latching on like parasites. Metallic claws punctured the ship's surface. Hatches hissed open, and outpoured Selvari warriors. Tall, insectoid creatures with razor-sharp limbs and glowing bioplasma rifles. The corridors erupted in gunfire as human Marines engaged the enemy. In the ship's lower decks, Marine Captain Sarah Vaughn and her squad rushed to defend the engineering bay. The Selvari were trying to disable the reactor. If they succeeded, the Invincible would be helpless. Blaster fire lit up the hallways. The Marines fought bravely, but the Selvari were stronger, faster, and ruthless. Vaughn gritted her teeth. This was going to be a brutal fight, a desperate stand. On the bridge, Kane's fury burned. The Titan-class supercarrier was the pride of humanity. No alien invader was going to take it. He turned to Strauss. Initiate lockdown protocols. Seal off critical sections. We hold the line. Yes, sir. Strauss snapped into action. Across the ship, heavy blast doors slammed shut, cutting off access points. Automated defense turrets activated, turning corridors into kill zones. But the Selvari kept coming. On the screens, Kane saw it. Another wave of enemy ships entering the system. Reinforcements. The odds were stacking against them. The Invincible was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and under attack from within. Yet Kane's voice was steady. "We are not losing this ship," he growled. "We fight until the last man." As the battle raged outside and within, one thing became clear. The Selvari wanted the Invincible for a reason. But why? Kane didn't have the answer yet. All he knew was that if the Invincible fell, humanity's last hope fell with it. And that was not an option. To be continued. The infiltration. A deadly discovery. The UHS Invincible trembled as another explosion shook its core. Fire and smoke filled sections of the lower decks as the Selvari boarding parties pushed deeper into the ship. Admiral Kane gripped the edge of his console. The battle outside was brutal, but the true fight was happening inside his ship. If they lost control of the engineering bay, the Selvari wouldn't need to destroy the Invincible. They could take it for themselves. "Commander Strauss," Kane called out, his voice firm but calm. "Status on the intruders." Strauss's eyes darted across the holographic map. Red markers blinked across multiple sections of the ship. "They've breached the hangar bays, engineering deck, and main corridors. Our Marines are holding, but the enemy is spreading." Kane narrowed his eyes. Spreading. Then came a chilling alert. Intruder presence detected in the command decks. The bridge crew froze. "They're inside." Strauss gasped. Kane's expression darkened. The Selvari weren't just launching a full-scale invasion. They were moving too fast. Too precise. This wasn't just a battle. It was an execution. A fight for survival. In the lower decks, Marine Captain Sarah Vaughn sprinted through the smoke-filled corridors, her pulse rifle gripped tightly. Her squad had been pinned down in the engineering bay, but they had pushed forward. Now she was leading the counterattack. "Hold the line. No one falls back," Vaughn shouted as she fired a burst of plasma rounds. A Selvari warrior screeched as the shots burned through its exoskeleton, dropping lifelessly to the ground. But more followed. Tall, insectoid creatures with glowing bioblades, their eyes pulsing with eerie blue light. The Marines fought with everything they had. Grenades, pulse cannons, even hand-to-hand combat when ammo ran low. For every human soldier lost, 2 Selvari fell. But Vaughn knew the truth. They couldn't hold forever. She activated her comms. "Admiral, they're pushing hard. We need reinforcements, or we lose engineering." Kane's voice came through, steady as ever. "Hold your ground, Captain. I'm sending backup." But backup wasn't coming fast enough. Vaughn's heart pounded as a new Selvari unit emerged. A massive warrior covered in bio-armor, its arms crackling with plasma energy. Her stomach tightened. This wasn't just a soldier. This was a Selvari warlord. The enemy's true intentions. Back on the bridge, Kane knew time was running out. He turned to Lieutenant Vance. "Tell me we have something, anything, to turn the tide. Vance's fingers flew across the console, scanning for anomalies. Then, suddenly, "Sir, I found something strange." Kane stepped forward. "Explain." Vance brought up a schematic of the Invincible. "That Selvari aren't attacking random locations. They're targeting 3 key points: engineering, command decks, and the central AI core." Kane stiffened. "They're after ECH-09. ECH-09 was more than just an AI. It was the most advanced war intelligence system humanity had ever created. The Invincible wasn't just a warship. It was the first of its kind. A supercarrier capable of fighting entire wars autonomously. And if the Selvari got their hands on ECH-09..." Kane's breath caught. "They wouldn't just take the Invincible. They'd turn it against humanity. We need to cut off access to the AI core. Now," Kane ordered. Strauss hesitated. "Sir, if we do that, we'll lose tactical support. We'll be flying blind." Kane met her gaze, his expression like steel. "If they take ECH-09, we won't just lose this battle. We'll lose the war." The betrayal. Deep inside the ship, in the AI core chamber, the emergency red lights flashed overhead. The automated security systems had been activated, but they weren't responding properly. Something was wrong. Lieutenant Darren Holt, one of the lead AI technicians, moved quickly through the chamber, his heart pounding. He had received the order to shut down ECH-09, but something felt off. As he reached the core console, he heard a voice behind him. "You're too late, Lieutenant." Holt turned sharply, only to see one of his own officers standing there, Lieutenant Graves. But something was wrong. Graves' eyes glowed faintly blue. His skin seemed unnaturally pale. And in his hands, a Selvari bioweapon. Holt took a step back. "Graves." The man's lips curled into a chilling smile. "We tried to warn you. You cannot stop this." Then, his body twisted, cracked, and something unnatural moved beneath his skin. Holt's stomach lurched. Graves wasn't Graves anymore. The Selvari had already infiltrated the crew. Before Holt could react, Graves lunged forward. The last thing he saw was the sharp glow of bioenergy before everything went dark. The realization, humanity's greatest warship is compromised. Alarms screamed across the Invincible as the breach in the AI core was confirmed. Kane's heart hammered. The Selvari weren't just attacking from the outside. They were already inside. They had been inside all along. And now, they were inches away from taking control of the Titan-class supercarrier. Kane took a deep breath, his mind racing. This wasn't just a battle anymore. This was a race against time. To be continued. Humanity's last stand. Outnumbered and outgunned. The UHS Invincible was no longer just a warship. It was a battleground. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge, his hands clenched into fists. The Selvari invasion wasn't just external, it was internal. They had infiltrated the crew. They had targeted ECH-09, the AI core. And now, the Titan-class supercarrier, humanity's most powerful weapon, was dangerously close to falling into enemy hands. A desperate battle in the AI core. Lieutenant Graves, or what was left of him, moved like a nightmare. His human body had been twisted and reshaped, something alien lurking beneath his skin. His eyes, glowing with unnatural blue light, locked onto the AI core as his form contorted, sharp bioweapons emerging from his arms. The few remaining security officers in the AI core chamber opened fire. Bullets and energy blasts tore through Graves' body, but he didn't fall. Instead, his wounds closed instantly, blue veins spreading across his flesh like a living infection. He grinned. "You still don't understand, do you?" Then, he moved. Faster than human eyes could track, he sliced through the first soldier, his bioblade tearing through armor like paper. The others fell back, firing wildly. Blood splattered across the dimly lit chamber, painting the walls in horror. In the chaos, another Xelvari infiltrator reached the control console. A clawed hand slammed onto the interface, injecting an alien virus into the AI system. The Invincible's lights flickered. The ship shuddered. And across the bridge, ECAO9's voice suddenly distorted. Warning. I-Core. Corruption. DGTKTD. Soy stems. Failing. Kane's blood ran cold. They were taking over the ship. The final counterattack. Captain Vaughn. Kane barked into the comms. Through the static, her voice came back. Still fighting in engineering, sir. We're barely holding. Forget defense. We need to retake the AI core now. On it, Vaughn growled. She turned to her battered squad. They had already lost half their Marines, but retreat wasn't an option. She took a deep breath. Move out. We push forward. Now. With a fierce battle cry, the Marines charged. Grenades exploded, pulses of energy lighting up the dark corridors as humans and Xelvari clashed in brutal combat. Bioblades met steel bayonets. Plasma rifles burned through exoskeletons. It was a bloodbath, but the Marines kept moving forward, forcing their way through the halls toward the AI core. Humanity's last hope rested on their shoulders. The Xelvari's secret weapon. Back on the bridge, Kane's instincts screamed at him. Something wasn't right. That Xelvari had waited too long to strike. If they had the power to disable the Invincible, why hadn't they done it earlier? Unless a new alert flashed across the command screen. Unidentified energy surge detected. Then, through the swirling chaos of the battle outside, something massive began emerging from hyperspace. At first, it was just a shadow, darker than the void itself. Then, the stars vanished, like Xelvari dreadnought. It was 3 times the size of the Invincible, its hull pulsing with alien energy, its weapon systems glowing like a storm ready to unleash hell. The bridge went silent. Even the most battle-hardened officers felt fear creep into their bones. Commander Strauss whispered, "Dear God." But Kane did not hesitate. He turned to his weapons officer. "Bring the overload cannon online. Now." The overload protocol. Humanity's last hope. The overload cannon was the Invincible's most powerful weapon. It needed time to charge, but when fired, it could wipe out an entire fleet in one blast. But there was a problem. The cannon needs 5 minutes to reach full power, Strauss said, eyes locked on the countdown. Kane's jaw tightened. They didn't have 5 minutes, because the Xelvari dreadnought was already charging its own weapon. Through the viewport, Kane saw it, a swirling mass of black energy gathering at the center of the enemy ship. If that thing fired first, the Invincible wouldn't survive. Divert all power to shields. Buy us time. Kane commanded. A massive energy shield expanded around the Invincible, shimmering like a blue dome. But the Xelvari knew what was coming. And they had one final trick. The betrayal revealed. Inside the AI core, Captain Vaughn's squad had breached the final doors. They rushed in, weapons raised, only to freeze in horror. Standing at the central console, hands on the AI controls, was Admiral Kane, or at least someone who looked like him. His uniform was pristine. His expression was calm, but his eyes were glowing blue. Vaughn's blood ran cold. What the hell? The fake Kane turned to face them, a slow smile curling on his lips. You humans always think you can win, that your will is stronger. His voice was identical to the real Kane's. Then, his skin began to shift, his features melting like liquid, revealing something else underneath. Not a human, not a machine. Something in between. A Xelvari infiltrator. A perfect mimic. Vaughn fired first. The plasma bolt hit the imposter straight in the chest, but instead of falling, he absorbed the energy, his body reshaping itself instantly. Then, he laughed. Vaughn's stomach twisted. This wasn't just a battle for control of the Invincible anymore. This was something far worse. Because if the Selvari could mimic humanity's highest leaders, no one was safe, and the war was only just beginning. The Selvari's secret weapon, the UHS Invincible, was on the edge of destruction. Inside the ship, the Selvari infiltrators had breached the AI core. Outside, a massive Selvari dreadnought loomed, its weapons charging. And now, a perfect copy of Admiral Kane stood before Captain Vaughn and her Marines in the AI core chamber, his glowing blue eyes filled with eerie amusement. The Selvari hadn't just infiltrated the ship. They had perfected the ability to mimic humanity itself. Vaughn's breath was ragged as she held her plasma rifle steady, but her hands trembled. If they could copy the Admiral, how many others had they replaced? The battle inside. A race against time. The mimic Kane smiled. "You can't stop this." His voice was smooth, confident, exactly like the real Kane. Vaughn gritted her teeth. "We'll see about that." She fired first. The plasma bolt hit the fake Kane straight in the chest, but his body absorbed the energy, the wound sealing instantly. Then he moved. Too fast, too unnatural. Before Vaughn could react, he was already behind her, his bio-enhanced limbs striking like a blur. She barely dodged, but another Marine wasn't so lucky. A sharp claw-like hand pierced through the soldier's armor, impaling him. His scream died instantly. "Fall back! Fall back!" Vaughn yelled. The Marines fired as they retreated, but the mimic advanced effortlessly, dodging and shifting like liquid metal. Then something even worse happened. A second mimic stepped forward from the shadows. Another Kane. And another. And another. 3, 4, 5. Identical copies of Admiral Kane, their glowing eyes flickering, their bodies twisting unnaturally. Vaughn's stomach twisted. How many were there? How long had they been on the ship? Her rifle shook in her hands. This wasn't just an infiltration. This was a takeover. On the bridge, the real Kane's gamble. Admiral Kane gripped the command console, his knuckles white. He didn't know what was happening in the AI core yet, but he could feel it. Something was very wrong. Overload cannon status. He snapped. Commander Strauss checked the readings. 80% charge, 2 more minutes. But Kane could see it through the viewport. The Selvari dreadnought's energy weapon was already at full power. They weren't going to get 2 minutes. Kane's heart pounded. "We have to delay them. Fire everything we have." The Invincible unleashed its full firepower. Missiles, railguns, heavy plasma cannons. The space between the 2 warships became a storm of destruction. Explosions rippled across the dreadnought's hull, but its shields held firm. And then, the enemy fired back. A wave of black energy surged toward the Invincible, a weapon far beyond human technology. "BRACEV for MPC2. Strauss shouted. The blast slammed into the Invincible, sending the ship spinning violently. The shields flickered and collapsed. Red warnings flashed across every screen. "Shields down to 12%. One more hit and we're done," Vance shouted. Kane's mind raced. Think. Think. Then, his eyes narrowed. There was one last move they could make. A move so dangerous it was considered suicidal. But it might buy them just enough time. The AI core, Vaughn's final stand. Captain Vaughn and her remaining Marines took cover behind the AI terminals. The mimics advanced slowly, their identical Kane-like faces smiling. One of them cocked its head. "Your kind never learns. We have already won." Vaughn reloaded her weapon. "Yeah," she spat. "Let's see if you can bleed." She threw a thermal charge. Boom. The explosion ripped through the chamber, tearing apart 2 mimics instantly. But the others kept coming. Vaughn cursed. They weren't fast enough. Then, her comms crackled. "Vaughn," Kane's voice came through. "I need you to do something insane." "I'm listening." Kane's final move. The Invincible strikes back. Kane's jaw tightened. I'm venting the entire AI core into space. Strauss's head whipped around. Sir, if you do that. I know. If they vented the AI core, they'd lose ECH-09 permanently. No AI. No tactical systems. But they'd also get rid of every Selvari infiltrator inside the ship. It was the only option. Vaughn, you and your team have 30 seconds to get out of there. Go. Vaughn's heart pounded. EV-1, Movi, she shouted. The Marines ran for their lives. Behind them, the mimics realized what was happening. And for the first time, they looked afraid. No, one of them roared, lunging forward. But Vaughn was already at the exit. She slammed the override panel, just as the chamber doors sealed shut. A loud hissing noise filled the air. Then, the vacuum of space ripped through the AI core, pulling everything into the void. The mimics screamed as they were sucked out, their bodies twisting and vanishing into the darkness. And just like that, the Invincible was clean. But ECH-09 was gone. The ship was now flying blind. The overload cannon fires. On the bridge, Kane watched the countdown. 5, 4, 3. The Selvari dreadnought charged its final shot. 2, 1. Fire, Kane roared. The overload cannon erupted, a blinding beam of energy cutting through the void, and slammed into the enemy ship. The dreadnought's shields shattered instantly. The beam tore through its core, igniting its fuel cells. For a brief second, time stood still. Then, the Selvari dreadnought exploded. A shockwave of fire and debris surged outward, consuming the remaining enemy fleet. The Invincible shuddered, but held firm. Then, silence. The battle was over. Aftermath. The war isn't over. The bridge crew was silent, breathing heavily, staring at the wreckage. Kane exhaled slowly. Strauss looked at him. Sir, we did it. Kane shook his head. We survived. But this war is far from over. Because deep in his gut, he knew that Selvari weren't done. They had evolved. They had infiltrated. And next time, humanity might not be so lucky. The final gamble. Humanity's secret weapon. The UHS Invincible drifted silently in space, surrounded by the debris of the fallen Selvari fleet. The wreckage of their dreadnought floated lifelessly, its once feared weapons reduced to smoldering ruin. But inside the ship, victory felt hollow. The AI core was gone. The ship's advanced systems were crippled. And worst of all, the Selvari's secret had been exposed. They had infiltrated the crew. They had perfected mimicry. This war wasn't about firepower anymore. It was about survival. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge, staring at the aftermath. His hands were steady, his face unreadable. But deep inside, he knew. This battle had changed everything. A ship running blind. Commander Strauss worked furiously at her console, trying to regain control of the ship. Without ECH-09, the Invincible had lost its tactical interface, automated defenses, and navigation support. Weapons are still operational, but targeting is manual now, Strauss reported. Navigation is unreliable without eye-assisted calculations. Hyperspace jumps will be dangerous. Kane nodded. What about communication? Lieutenant Vance frowned. We've re-established short-range comms, but long-range channels are still down. We can't send out a distress call. Kane's jaw tightened. They were alone. Then an urgent message came through from the lower decks. Sir, this is Vaughn. We have a situation. You need to get down here. Kane didn't hesitate. He turned to Strauss. You have the bridge. Keep scanning for additional threats. Then, without another word, he headed toward the lower decks. The last Selvari. A prisoner's warning. The air in the prison block was thick with tension. Marines stood at attention, their weapons aimed at a single Selvari prisoner, restrained inside an energy cell. This was the only survivor from the infiltration team, a warrior captured during the chaos of the battle. Its chitinous exoskeleton shimmered under the flickering lights. Its violet eyes gleamed with something that made Kane uneasy. Not fear, not anger, but amusement. Kane stepped forward. "You lost." His voice was calm, but firm. The Xelvari chuckled, a deep guttural sound that sent a shiver through the room. Then it spoke. "You still don't understand, human." Kane's eyes narrowed. "Then explain it to me." The creature tilted its head. "You believe you have won. That destroying one ship, one fleet, has made a difference." It leaned forward slightly, its mandibles clicking. "But the war you fight, it ended long before this battle began." Kane's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" The Xelvari's glowing eyes burned with something dark. "You think we needed to take your ship? No, we already took something far more valuable." Kane felt his pulse quicken. A chill ran down his spine. Vaughn stepped forward, her voice cold. "What the hell are you talking about?" The alien smiled. "Your people, Captain." The room fell deathly silent. Kane's fingers twitched at his side. "Explain. Now." The Xelvari warrior's grin widened. "We have been among you for longer than you think. We did not need your ship. We did not need your weapons." It leaned forward, its voice a whisper of poison. "We already walk among your fleet." Vaughn cursed under her breath. The Marines exchanged uneasy glances. But the Xelvari wasn't finished. "Your war is already lost. You just don't know it yet." Then it began to laugh. A deep, bone-chilling sound that echoed through the prison block. Kane turned away, his mind racing. If the Xelvari had already infiltrated more of the human fleet, if they were already among them, then humanity wasn't just at war with an enemy fleet. They were at war with an enemy hiding within their own ranks. A desperate plan. Kane strode back onto the bridge, his mind working faster than ever. Strauss turned to him immediately. "Sir, we've re-established some of our scanners. There's something you need to see." A holographic map flickered to life, and Kane's breath caught in his throat. A massive Xelvari fleet was heading straight for human space. Thousands of ships, dreadnoughts, supercarriers, invasion forces. This battle had only been a distraction. The real attack had already begun. Kane clenched his fists. How long until they reached the core systems? Strauss's face was pale. If they keep this speed, 2 weeks. 2 weeks before Earth itself was under siege. Kane exhaled slowly. The Xelvari had played them perfectly. But it wasn't over. Not yet. His gaze hardened. "Then we take the fight to them." Strauss hesitated. "Sir, the Invincible is damaged. Our eye is gone. We don't even know if we can jump safely." Kane turned to her, his voice like iron. "Then we do it the old-fashioned way. Asterisk, 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 asterisk." Strauss met his gaze, then nodded. "Plot a course to their nearest stronghold. We're going on the offensive." Kane turned back toward the viewport, staring into the endless void. They weren't just going to sit back and wait for the invasion. They were going to strike first. Because if the Xelvari wanted to turn this war into a fight for survival, then humanity would show them exactly what survival meant. To be continued. Victory at a cost. But the war isn't over. The UHS Invincible moved through the void, battered but still standing. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge, his eyes locked onto the holographic display of their next target. A Xelvari stronghold deep within enemy space. It wasn't just any stronghold. It was a cloning facility, a breeding ground for the Xelvari's mimic program. If they destroyed it, they wouldn't just strike a blow against the enemy fleet. They would cripple the Xelvari's ability to create more infiltrators. This was humanity's only chance to turn the war around. And Kane wasn't about to waste it. The final assault begins. Prepare for combat. All hands to battle stations. Kane's voice echoed across the ship. The crew moved with quiet determination. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but they had one advantage. Surprise. With their eye gone, the Invincible wasn't broadcasting the usual fleet signals. The Accelvari wouldn't detect them until it was too late. Strauss turned from her console. "Sir, we're 5 minutes from the target." Kane nodded. "Weapons hot. No mercy." This wasn't just a raid. This was payback. The Accelvari's hidden arsenal. The Invincible emerged from the dark void of space like a phantom, its engines burning blue against the blackness. Ahead of them, the Accelvari cloning facility came into view, a massive station surrounded by defense platforms and warships. And then, the alarms blared. "Enemy fleet detected. They'd spotted us," Vance shouted. On the display, dozens of Accelvari warships came to life, their engines firing up, weapons locking onto the Invincible. The Accelvari had been expecting them. Kane's jaw clenched. No turning back now. He stepped forward, voice cold as steel. "All batteries, fire at will." A battle like no other. The Invincible unleashed its fury. Railguns, plasma cannons, missile salvos, every weapon roared to life, cutting through enemy defenses. Accelvari ships dove and weaved, firing back with deadly precision. The sky became fire. Marines braced for incoming boarders as Accelvari assault pods latched onto the hull. The battle was everywhere, outside, inside, in the very heart of the ship. But humanity refused to fall. A dangerous plan. "Sir, the enemy fleet is too large. We won't last." Strauss shouted over the chaos. Kane's mind worked furiously. They needed to finish this fight. Fast. Then, an idea. A reckless, impossible idea. "We overload the reactor." The bridge froze. Strauss's eyes widened. "Sir, that would destroy." Kane cut her off. "Not our reactor. Theirs." The Accelvari cloning facility ran on a fusion core. If they could detonate it, they wouldn't just destroy the base. They would wipe out the entire Accelvari fleet in one blast. It was suicide. But it was their only shot. A race against time. Captain Vaughn led a strike team into the heart of the cloning facility, fighting through horrific Accelvari creatures, half-formed mimics, twisted experiments. The halls dripped with alien growths, the air filled with the hissing of the enemy. "Set the charges. We need to blow this place sky high," Vaughn shouted. Her Marines planted explosives along the reactor core. The countdown began. 10 minutes. "We're done here. Fall back." They turned to run back to the dropships. Then, the doors sealed shut. That Accelvari had trapped them. The sacrifice. Vaughn's heart pounded. "Kane, we need an evac now." On the Invincible's bridge, Kane's fists clenched. If Vaughn and her team didn't make it out, they would die with the station. "We're coming for you. Hold on." The Invincible moved closer, dodging enemy fire. But it was too late. Vaughn knew it. Her Marines knew it. And still, they fought. The charges ticked down. 5 minutes. 4 minutes. "We're not making it out, sir." Vaughn's voice was calm. Kane closed his eyes for half a second. Then he nodded. "Understood." A pause. Then Vaughn's voice came through one last time. "Give him hell, sir." And then, the countdown hit 0. The explosion. The Accelvari facility erupted in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave ripped through the enemy fleet, tearing apart their warships. The Invincible barely escaped, its shields flaring as the blast sent it spiraling through space. When the light faded, the Accelvari fleet was gone. The cloning facility was gone. But so was Captain Vaughn and the brave Marines who stayed behind. The aftermath. The war isn't over. Silence filled the bridge. The crew was alive. But the cost had been too high. Kane stood, staring at the burning wreckage through the viewport. They had won. For now. Strauss approached, her voice soft. "Sir, what now?" Kane took a deep breath. Then he turned to his crew. His face was set in stone. Now, his voice was calm. "We end this war.